Hey everyone, it's Nancy with She's Got Yarn. Real quick, I am going to be doing releasing a lot of footage from Boggy Creek Blanket Drive. So this video is going to be segment number 1. There's going to be a couple because of my app. It doesn't let me download a video over 20 minutes for some strange reason. I hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you everybody for participating. Just enjoy the video. I had so much fun. Good morning, y'all. I'm at Boggy Creek. We just got the cars unloaded. So I'm gonna get a little bit of footage. Before I close my truck, I'm gonna get my purse. You know how my car likes to lock me out. This is a signed Paul Newman picture. He's one of the founders. Oh, look, this is Boggy Creek Theater.
Watch your step, lady. I probably should have taken you all up the sidewalk, but it's okay. I'm sorry.
We're good.
So in here you can see some photos of campers. Some of them are here in the theater, some of them are in other locations that you'll see throughout the day. Because we're going to see a lot of empty buildings, and I hope that I can bring it to life for you a little bit. Video. I'm going to turn the light on. So like a little, come on, lady.
Oh, wow. Wow. This is amazing.
Cool.
Theater.
We opened our gates in 1996. And the catalyst for Boggy Creek opening was a young girl from South Florida. And just so you know, this is actually really cool that we can show this off. You can come down to where I am, and I'll talk about that in a minute about the theater, because many times when you're in a car,
I think you can go that way, Cindy.
to the back of the room, but at camp you're not. So you can come down the side, and if your pals were hanging out here, you could hang out here. We can move these chairs, and you can hang out here and see the stage.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's awesome.
And I rarely get the opportunity to show off how that works, so welcome to Boggy. But you can go all the way down.
There she
around.
comes.
You can go anywhere you want.
Completely 100%.
So, camp started in 1996, and the catalyst for camp was there was a young girl from South Florida by the name of Jennifer who was diagnosed with cancer when she was 3 years old. It was a relatively aggressive cancer. When she turned 7, she applied to go to a camp in Connecticut that was created by Paul Newman for children with cancer. And it was a medical camp. He came up with this concept that kids who were really, really sick could go to camp and have fun, and in his words, raise a little hell, under the watchful eye of pediatric oncologists. And that's why they could go and be safe. So these were kids who couldn't go anywhere else, and Jennifer fit that category. And she went and spent 7 days at the Hole in the Wall camp in Connecticut that still exists today. And when she came home, her mother will tell you she came home a different little girl. Now, to give you an idea of that phrase itself, I left camp for about 7 years. I went to work for Habitat, and I came back. I had the opportunity in my first few months back to interview a camper parent whose son has epilepsy, Lucas, and I'll talk about him a little bit today. And when I interviewed her, I said, what does Camp Boggy Creek mean? What did that experience mean? And her exact words were, my son came home a different little boy. So my job is to help you understand what that means and the impact of everything that you are doing, because you are making it possible. I just work here, but you guys are the ones who make those moments happen. Jennifer did not live to see our gates open, but she and her parents said there should be a camp in Florida for children like her, so that more people who live in her community could have that experience, even though they were really, really sick. And her parents called Paul Newman and said, how do we do this? And they engaged their circle of friends in Miami, one of which is our founder, David Horowitz. And Jennifer actually asked him on her deathbed to make sure the camp got built. And Boggy Creek was built in 1996. 90,000 children and family members have been through our gates since. So it was one little girl's dream that made that possible, because those 7 days at a camp in Connecticut changed her perspective about who she was, and that she wasn't defined by her cancer anymore, and what it was like to just be a kid. And that's what we do all the time as well. So, Paul Newman, I love talking to people who know who he is because not everybody knows who he is. His birthday is right around the corner, so that's a big day for us. January 26th is his birthday. And look at our social media on those days because we tend to do a lot of fun posts about Paul Newman. And we welcome anybody to watch a Paul Newman movie, eat some Paul Newman popcorn, and tag us, you know. That's kind of a fun thing we like to do so we can repost Paul Newman and spread the word about how great a human being he was. He had a lot to do with this building because he was an actor, obviously. I don't have to explain that to you guys, first and foremost. And you can put on a 6-act play here if you wanted to. Generally, what you see are things like my friend Lucas, I was talking about, who loves to dress in a hot dog costume and play the drums. That's what he does. But stage day is something that happens for all kids and families. So we are a year-round camp. We are about to start our family retreat weekend. So in the spring and in the fall, from Friday to Sunday, on the weekends, children who are campers between 7 and 16 that live with one of the illnesses that we serve come to camp, and they bring their siblings, they bring their parents, their guardian, whoever they define as their core family gets to come to camp for the weekend at no charge. In the summer, we do summer camp, where just that child with the illness comes to camp. And it's always like illnesses grouped together. So one weekend or week, everyone has cancer or heart disease or sickle cell or spina bifida or so on. So stage day happens on the family retreat weekends on Sunday mornings. And during summer camp, it is the last full day of camp is stage day. So the kids can work on whatever it is they want to do. We've got full dressing rooms in the back. Universal Studios built the building for us when camp opened. They continue to, through a granting process, support us. Their employees love to come out and volunteer. They help us clean up after summer camp. They come out and some of their vendors make sure all this lighting works and everything. They touch up the costumes. I mean, this is their building. So I have to give a shout out to Universal, who supports not just us, quite frankly. They last year gave away, I think, a little over $5 million to community nonprofits. So I want to give them a prop. And their employees get engaged, and you know they are very dedicated community partners and leaders. Stage day. I want to talk about a particular stage day that was really impactful, that was on a family retreat weekend. And FYI, I started here as a volunteer on family retreat weekend, so those are kind of near and dear to my heart. But this happened 2 years ago on a family retreat weekend. And what you find is dads, a lot of times don't get on stage by themselves. They might get on stage with their wife and the kids and, you know, maybe a volunteer that they've made a connection with, but rarely do you see a dad perform alone. But on this particular stage day on that family retreat weekend, there was a dad who had his guitar, and it was right after another dad was performing with his daughter, and she was a little cheerleader. She was like 10, and she was going to do her cheer moves, and dad was going to repeat everything, and they did that together until she did the split, and then he said, okay, I'm out. So that was immediately followed by the lights dropping down, a single microphone on stage and a stool, and this other father came up. And he looked out over the audience and he said, and the lights are down, you know, and he said, do you remember the day your child was diagnosed, the day everything in your life changed? And you could collectively see and feel all of the parents nodding. Like he took them on that journey of that day when everything was different. And then he talked about his own story and said that he remembered that day. He had met his wife and daughter at the doctor's office, at the specialist's office, and they got the diagnosis. And he said he sat there and listened, and he was trying to absorb it all. And he got in his truck when the appointment was over, and his job was to go pick up the siblings from school that day while mom went home. And as he was making that drive alone on the way to school, he said he wondered what life was going to be like now, because it was not what he had planned. Everything was going to be different from that moment forward, and he knew that as a man and as a father and a husband, he was starting over. And then he flawlessly sang Chris Stapleton's song, Starting Over. And there was not a dry eye in the house, not because they were sad, but because they were right there with him in that moment. The beauty of that moment is this man felt that safe. That's what we do. He knew it was okay to be vulnerable and to share that because everybody in the room understood his life. That's what camp does. For every child, every sibling, every mom and dad and grandparent who come through the gates, it is a common bond of a shared life journey that makes you feel safe because you know people understand you. That is what Camp Boggy Creek is. That's how we begin to heal the scars on the inside, with intentional fun programs, and we're gonna talk about that today. There's a lot of fun, but everything is done with the intent of those people that helped you unload those blankets. They are psych-social workers and professionals, and they may be dressed up in clown costumes and fun coats, but they are intentionally helping heal the scars on the inside of all of the families who come through our gates. You make that happen. I want to make that very clear. Every Afghan, every bear, every dollar, we couldn't do it without you. So I'm just here to tell you the impact of what you do. And that's the theater. Chris Murphy's daughter, I was at an event recently and she was sitting at the table with me. She's in college, I think, and she is a psych-soc for adults and pediatric who are going through illnesses, ironically. But she's never volunteered at camp, so I'm trying to get her out here to do a week at camp. I'm like, to come be part of camp in a different way. She used to come with her dad. Every time they came to do the lights, every spring, they come and do the lights. So somewhere, and I promised her this year I was gonna find it, somewhere up there, apparently we don't dust them, she leaves her handprint every year in the dust. And then she puts her name. And that's her way of saying, I was here, I changed this light bulb, I made the theater possible. And she's been doing that since she was like 10. And I had no idea. I'm like, this is amazing. So I'm gonna climb up there and find her handprints one day. But, she'll be back. So yeah, so that's great. So yes, please have him. If he just wants to hook up with Chris, Chris will make sure he gets out here.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I'll give you her number.
Small world. We do. We serve children on ventilators. Yep. Yep, we sure do.
Do you take Down syndrome?
We don't. We do not. It doesn't mean that we won't in the future. The illness groups that we're currently serving, we do because we're not competing with anybody else that might be offering something similar, and we don't want to be a competitive nonprofit. What we try to do is fill in the gaps where there are, health organizations that don't have the opportunity to provide something similar. It may not be to this extent. I mean, we are a state-of-the-art $5 million, 232-acre camp. But if they have the opportunity to go somewhere, we don't want to compete for the people that are supporting that.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that it won't happen in the future. And it also doesn't mean, so if someone has Down syndrome, if a child has Down syndrome and they have any of the other illness groups that we serve, which can happen. The same thing is true with autism. We don't have a dedicated week or weekend to autism, but we serve families who have children with autism. We don't have a summer camp, but if they have a second diagnosis, so asthma, cancer, heart disease, and a perfect example is my grandson who has CP. We don't have a dedicated week for CP, but he also has severe asthma. He's hospitalized when the weather changes like this. I mean, he is a severe asthmatic. So they come to the breathing and ventilator, because it's all combined, family retreat weekend. So while there's not a core CP, so that's how we do that. And we are looking at what other groups of children need to come through our gates this year. And Universal granted us a very large portion, almost the entire fund, for a weekend where we are doing our first emotional support, unique to, meaning the child does not have to have any of the other illnesses, and we are doing a weekend dedicated to victims of the hurricanes. So if a child between same age distinction, 7 and 16, was in a home, and we're going through what does that look like? Did they lose their home? It's not going to be, did you lose power for a few hours? It's that they were greatly impacted by the hurricane. They were flooded. They've lost their home. They're fiscally insecure. then they will share a weekend with other families. So we're doing that in March. It's the first time we've ever done anything like that. We're calling it Innovation Station. And Innovation Station is a way that we will begin to engage new groups of children and families to see what does that look like, and and where do we go from there. So we want to become the emotional support resource for a variety of things for kids. And it's not that they don't go through counseling while they're here. But again, what I hope to bring to life, and I think I just did with the father story, is it's organic. Because everything we do is intentional. These organic, beautiful moments happen that build self-esteem and empower and help our families and kids walk out of the gates, feeling a little different. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So we do serve children who breathe on ventilators, all the way down to, a lot of those children are prone. They're in hospital beds, and so they can get around camp. So you can get around camp too. And we combine that with other breathing disorders. Great question. Anything else before we head back out? Okay.
There's our Cindy Freeze. Baby fibers and crochet. We're at the pool. Pool building.
Come on up. I gotta unlock the door. I'll lock you out if you're not with us when we go in. And you've got to see the pool.
Oh look, see the quilts that were donated.
Oh, look.
Wow. Look, is that a chalet?
I could just sit down and.
You guys.
So what I'll let you guys do is kind of take your pictures and video, and then we'll head over here to the shade a little bit, and I'll talk about the pool. Does that make sense? Sure.
Y'all, look at this pool. Amazing.
So let me tell you guys a little bit about where you are. So you notice what we refer to as beach access. We have PVC wheelchairs. So when a camper is in a wheelchair, they can shift out of their wheelchair into the PVC wheelchair and roll in until they're buoyant enough that they'll then usually throw their arms around if it's a family retreat weekend, a parent's back, if it's summertime, counselor's back, and then be able to get in the pool.
Cool.
So that's why we have beach access. The snack bar is called the French fryer room. So the pool is heated. It's not on right now. The pool is heated because we serve children who have sickle cell anemia. Everybody gets to enjoy the fact that the pool is heated, but when you have sickle cell, a severe temperature change can cause you to go into crisis. Yeah. Crisis is your blood cells go from round to sickle shape, thus the name, and those sharp edges of your blood vessels can get caught in the joints, which is so painful. The first drug given to somebody who goes into crisis is morphine. That's how painful it is. But they can also get caught in your heart, in the blood cells in your head. You can have a heart attack. You can have a stroke. I mean, it's a horrible illness. So if it's a very hot day in the summer, you don't want a child who has sickle cell getting into a very cold swimming pool. So our pool is heated for that reason. On a day like today, and now I'll get to the snack bar. On a day like today, if this is a family retreat weekend and you're swimming in the pool, and again, everybody gets this luxury, but it's because of children with sickle cell, you would come out and that cool breeze would hit you, right? And so you could go into crisis. So you're gonna exit the pool where that ladder is and go into that room, which is a sauna room. The kids have named it the French fryer room, so that then you can dry off, your body temperature will stay the same, and you're less likely to go into crisis. So that's what that is. Oh, everything is fun but intentional. I love that you thought it was a snack bar. I think that's amazing. So in the pool, it's about having fun. We also have portable ventilators. So children who breathe on ventilators can detach from their machine. Counselor holds the vent on their back. And in our little piece of magic video, you see that actually. And you see the counselor kind of going through the pool and the child's on their back and the ventilator's attached. So there you go. Yeah, so because the idea is you get to be a kid. And if you're a kid, you should be able to get in the pool.
Yeah.
And if you breathe on a ventilator, you got to be able to get in the pool. So that's why all that happens. So beautiful moment, and we actually do have a video on our YouTube page with the counselor Thomas that this happened with. We had a child who applied to camp. He had, I want to say, 5 or 6 different illnesses. Oh, please don't fall.
Yeah, I don't want to.
She's not allowed
The
to injure
medical team
herself.
is not on duty.
I'm not allowed to break myself.
No. He applied to camp. He had a variety of illnesses, including one of the illnesses that we serve. But he was blind and he was deaf. And frankly, for a summer camp, we normally would not be able to take him because he would need one-on-one. And we generally can't do one counselor to one camper. That particular summer, one of our full-time summer staff members knew sign language. And he said, you know, if we can jerry-rig my job so that everybody else can do my job for a week, I can go one-on-one with this camper and we can take them. So the medical team met, the program team met, and we decided to, you know, that we could make sure this camper had a great experience, because that's really what it's about. So Thomas was the counselor, and his job was to make sure he had the best week of his life, right? And they got to the pool, and he was in a wheelchair, never walked a day in his life. He's in a wheelchair, so Thomas does the transfer to the PVC wheelchair, and they're rolling into the pool, and right as our camper is about to make that transition from the wheelchair to the counselor's back, his feet touch the bottom on that ramp. And he signed, "I'm walking." And so their entire time at the pool, they walked back and forth, because it's the only time this child ever had that sensation of being able to walk. So again, all intentional, but these beautiful organic moments happen without any pre-planning, without anybody saying, hey, let's do that. And it happens all the time. You know, these are the stories that I tell you are the ones that we know, and we know for every family and every camper, there's some life-changing momentum that happens when they come to Boggy. So that's the pool. SeaWorld built our pool. We have a variety of work parties that keep and maintain it, as well as obviously we pay vendors. Why are we a $5 million camp? I think once you see the property, you begin to understand why. But Phi Kappa Tau last year painted the deck. They came and volunteered and painted the deck last summer. So we try to repaint it every year so that everything stays fresh. They also painted all the railings around here. So
They did a great job.
yeah, they did. They did. They had a conference in Orlando, and they came out for a day. There were like, I don't know, 30 of them. They came out for a day. I'll talk about one when we get to arts and crafts. He was funny. He's like, I'm not painting anything. He was like 85. He said, I'm not painting. We always have a job when work parties come out. I'm like, I got a job for you. I'm going to give you your choice. And I'll tell you what he chose when we get to arts and crafts, because it was hysterical. Anyway, any questions?
No.
Okay.
This is awesome.
And then we're going to go, our next stop is going to be the Patch, which is our medical facility. On the other side of the lake, because we do have 232 acres of land, on the other side of the lake is another housing unit where the doctors stay, because they bring their families. So they have kind of, we had a race car driver pay to build that building for us a couple of years ago. So doctors could have their own kind of condo, and their wives could come, and their kids, or their husbands and their kids, because then they're more likely to volunteer, quite frankly. So yeah, that makes sense. And we need them. We can't have camp without our doctors.
So this is the end of part 1 of our Boggy Creek visit, and I will try to get part 2 out as soon as possible. Thank you guys. I love you all. Mwah.